The House will come to order. Announcements by the Speaker.
Announced by the Speaker, a message from the Senate has been received requesting concurrence by the House to amendments adopted by the Senate to the following House files. House File number 1403 and House File number 2950.
Conference Committee reports on House files.
Conference Committee report on House File number 2292, an act relating to early childhood. The report is addressed to the Honorable Melissa Hortman, Speaker of the House, and the Honorable Bobby Joe Champion, President of the Senate. We, the undersigned conferees for House File number 2292, report that we've agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The report is signed by 2 of the 3 members on the part of the House and 2 of the 3 members on the part of the Senate. Pinto moves that the report of the Conference Committee on House File number 2292 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
I recognize the member from Ramsey who will explain the conference report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, the early learning budget bill, the portion of the Children and Families Committee, left the House as a terrific bill, and it's gotten even better. We had good conversation with Chair Kunesh, and I have to say, great connection with the work of the E12 committee. We'll be hearing from Chair Joachim a little bit later, but we have additional preschool slots over there, and so we're providing some funding for that in this bill, and some Great Start scholarships to provide childcare and early learning for families, and a number of just terrific pieces. And one change that's coming back, members, is that we have ongoing funding in the base for Head Start and Early Head Start. That had been in the Senate bill and seemed like a very good addition to ours as well. And so I would urge adoption of the report. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Discussion on the Pinto motion to adopt the Conference Committee report. The member from Rice, Representative Daniels.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to make a motion not to adopt the Conference Committee report for House File 2292 and send the committee report back to the Conference Committee.
The clerk will report the motion.
Daniels moves that the House refuse to adopt the Conference Committee report on House File number 2292 and that the bill be returned to the Conference Committee.
Representative Daniels, to your motion.
Madam Speaker, this Conference Committee report came out at 11:45 last night, and we had scheduled a noon Conference Committee to go through the side-by-sides, totally bypassing any type of a public meeting on it. So I would like to see it go back to the Conference Committee to actually discuss and debate the opportunities for amendments. Before today, the Conference Committee met last on May 3rd. Since then, we've had no meetings, no discussions to help with the Conference Committee report approved at 8:53 this morning. Today, we heard a hearing at 3 o'clock to review the Conference Committee report that was already signed, and at the desk at 8:53, the public was deliberately shut out of the process. So we are clear, the only purpose of today's Conference Committee was to tell the public what the DFL agreed to behind closed doors without any public input or opportunity to debate the amendments. So for those reasons, Madam Speaker, I make my motion, and I think we should just get it right. We've got time left. I know the DFL wants to get it here on the 18th, but we have till the 22nd. So we've got time to do it right, not in the dark of night, not with no public watching. So that's my motion. And I want a roll call.
Representative Daniels requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as Representative Daniels alluded to, there was a Conference Committee meeting today to walk through the report, the spreadsheet, et cetera. And as I talked about then, the typical process is that we have a couple Conference Committee meetings, which we did. Typically, the chairs then need to confer to work out the differences between the bills, and often that's something that happens between the chairs. They're working things out. And then there is a presentation of what the chairs have agreed to, and then that's written up as a Conference Committee report, and then no other meeting at that point. It's that presentation. In this case, it's a slightly different order in that the report of the agreement was produced, but it's the same that same process in that way. And so we did have the hearing today, and it was good to walk through it. I will say I have been hearing from members of the public all day who are really, really pleased by what's been put together here. And so, members, I would respectfully urge the rejection of the motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Discussion on the motion. The member from Isanti, Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Representative Pinto, I know you're new here, so you may not know that that's actually not how it works. That's not at all how it works, but good on you for trying to gloss over your corrupt process. The way that it actually works, and I think the public will understand as I kind of tell this process, they'll understand the difference between right and wrong like a child could. But apparently in this chamber, we're struggling with a little of that tonight. This is not how it works and not how it should work. The way that it works is we pass a bill out of the House. We'll give you a little how a bill becomes a law here in Minnesota. You pass a bill out of the House and you pass a bill out of the Senate. It has to have the same language to go to the governor's desk for a signature. If the governor signs it, that bill becomes a law. If the House and the Senate pass bills with different language, then we appoint conference committees, and you have 5 members, 3 or 5, in this case 5 members from each body that meet on a conference committee, and they work out the differences in the bill so that we can meet that constitutional requirement that the bill must pass the House and the Senate with exactly the same language. So the conference committee process is very important. And it is a public process where we have public open hearings where we can actually take testimony. People who are impacted by these provisions can come in and testify in favor or against those provisions or give more information to the conferees before they make those decisions. And then the conference committee can build that conference committee report by adopting provisions one by one, working out the differences. You know, the way that it works is, I would say, you know, Mr. Chairman of the conference committee, one day it's the Senate and the next day it's the House, and it goes back and forth each day. I would say, Mr. Chairman, I would move to adopt the House language on such and such provision into the conference committee report. And then you would actually vote on that in a conference committee. I know that's a novel idea that you'd probably never thought of, right? And then if there's enough votes, and it actually has to, I'm sorry, I'm raising my voice because there's just so much background noise in here. I can hear so many people speaking, so I just want to make sure that nobody misses this.
Members, please take your conversations off of the House floor. Members, please take your conversations off of the House floor. Members. Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You adopt provision by provision, and there's a vote in the conference committee to adopt those provisions into the conference committee report, and then ultimately a vote by the conference committee to adopt the conference committee report. And then once the report is prepared by the revisor's office, there are places on that bill for members of the conference committee to sign. It requires a majority in order to adopt one provision into the conference committee report, it requires a majority of the House and a majority of the Senate to adopt that provision. And then the conference committee report, before it can get to the desk here in the House chamber, requires a majority of the signatures from each body. So that's the way it has worked historically. That's the way it does work. That's the transparent process. The way this one worked, however, you just heard, because Representative Daniels, who sits next to me here, was on the conference committee. Well, he was appointed to the conference committee. Apparently they weren't meeting. They haven't met since May 3rd. They had a little conversation, and then to Representative Pinto's point, the chairs then went into a dark, closed, smoky back room, and they worked out what they wanted in the bill. And then at 11-something last night, 11:45 last night, the conference committee report was finalized by the revisor's office, and it was posted at the desk this morning at 8:53 with signatures on it, before there was ever a conference committee to go through the provisions or adopt the conference committee report. That's not the way this works. And Representative Daniels, he's sitting right next to me here, so I probably don't need to ask him to yield for a question, but I assume before 8:53, he can just nod at me and I'll repeat his answer. Were you given an opportunity to sign that conference committee report? No. Didn't even know about it. And he was on the conference committee. And we just had somebody stand in the chamber and pretend like that was okay. That's the normal process, to use his words. Are you kidding me? I think the public expects better out of us, Representative Pinto. So the person who was from the minority party actually appointed to the conference committee didn't have an opportunity to even discuss any of the provisions that were in the bill because there was no meeting. He didn't have an opportunity to say, you know what, Mr. Chairman, I move that we strike that provision, or I move that we change that language to something else, maybe a higher restriction or a little more funding or a little less funding or something like that. Or to make a motion himself to say, you know what, this provision's really important to me, I want to make sure it's in the bill. And now we have a conference committee report in front of us that had a whole bunch of stuff stripped out of it, but we didn't have an advocate in the room. We didn't have somebody in the room that got to argue and say, you know, and some of these were provisions that were adopted here on the House floor that you all voted for. And I would never accuse you of this, but it looks like you maybe just to save a little conversation said, oh, we'll take your amendment, and then we'll just, we'll strip it out in conference committee. That old trick, we'll just strip it out in conference committee. And then when it comes back to the floor, it can't be amended. A conference committee report can't be amended. It's either an up or down vote. You know what? Sorry, I'm teasing you a little bit, but it is a serious issue. This is a process that is designed that the public can have some input and they can see what's going on. And we have perverted it to the point where we're calling it normal for the two chairs to go into a smoky back room, have a report finalized before there's ever a conference committee meeting, have that report finalized at 11:45 p.m. last night, and have it filed at the desk here at 8:53 this morning with signatures on it. And then have a conference committee at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to say, well, this is what we did. Really? That's not okay, guys. I don't care who we are, that's not okay. So I stand obviously in support of Representative Daniels' motion to refuse to adopt this conference committee report. Let's send it back. Let's actually have a meeting. Let's go through the conference committee report article by article and provision by provision, and let's talk about this House position and the Senate position, and maybe we could actually find some compromise between the two. Maybe we'll find out in some cases that the House provision was better. Maybe we'll find out the Senate provision was better. Maybe, just maybe, we'll have a sobering moment where you'll figure out that your ideas are terrible and you'll remove them altogether, but I'm not going to hope too much. But the reality is you've got the votes. You've got the votes to pass what you want, but when you slap the public and the minority across the face, you look like a fool. And please do not tell me you don't care. Because you were elected to serve in this chamber. Sit at your desk and just look up right now. Look up at this beautiful place that you get to work in. It's an honor to be here. And think about the approximately 43,000 Minnesotans that you represent in your district. And how important it is that you are their voice here at the Capitol. And think for a second that every other member of this chamber also represents 43,000 people. And we are their voice here at the Capitol. And Representative Daniels on this conference committee represented, he was the only minority member on that conference committee. So he wasn't just representing his 43,000, but he was representing all Minnesotans. And you took that opportunity away from him. You didn't care enough about his opinion to even include him. And then once you had the report finalized, you didn't even ask him if he wanted to sign it. You didn't give an opportunity to read it, but you didn't even give him an opportunity to sign the report before it was turned in at the desk. And you couldn't even fake a meeting? Like, that's when you know there's no shame, right? You couldn't even have a dog and pony show meeting where you roll out a conference committee report and you go through the provisions and you have a fake vote and you all vote in favor and he votes against. You couldn't even muster that up? Do you really think the public's not paying attention that much that you didn't even have to go through that? And that would be an abomination to do that. What you should have done was have a real conference committee where you went through provision by provision and article by article and talked about the merits of each one and what the House position was and what the Senate position was, and maybe, just maybe, what was good for Minnesotans. But I'll tell you what I see going on in the chamber tonight and the last 24 hours, this process and this majority is not good for Minnesotans. And I think they're going to remember it in the next election. So I'd ask members to vote in favor of this motion to refuse adoption of this conference committee report. Let's send it back and let's actually respect Minnesotans. Let's respect each other and let's do a better job of our job that we've been so honorably elected to here in the Minnesota House. So, Madam Speaker, with that, I'd ask members to vote against this, or excuse me, vote for this motion to refuse to adopt, and let's send this thing back.
Member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, to be clear, I guess I'm a little bit uncertain about the reference to provisions being taken out. There's a couple places where there's some deletions because the provisions being moved to a different area. You can see that. I guess there was a reference to my being new here, and it is the case that I've been around for a little while, and have I'll say that I have the receipts. The 2017 Environment Budget Bill under a prior speaker, House File 888, by the way, same process. 2017 HHS Budget Bill under a prior speaker, House File 799. There was no hearing at all of that conference committee back in 2017. That's what I recall. A couple years before that, the 2015 Jobs and Energy Budget, House File 1437. You can look it up. That conference committee report was presented at 2 minutes to midnight. And as folks in the minority were attempting to ask do anything, have any of this process, that did not happen. Now listen, that is not to say that what those things happened, that was the correct thing to do at all. Those last couple things that I said. The fact is that this conference committee report, the fact is that we had a series of meetings. We discussed provisions in the bills. Folks had a chance to ask questions. We did all that. There was a holdup because there's a tie between this and the 12 budget bill. And then the conference committee report is posted as soon as members have signed, but it was sent to all members for consideration of signing. Certainly have the opportunity to do so. And members, the fact is that we have got a phenomenal conference committee report here. We'll get a chance to talk about it in a second. That is going to get a ton of kids off to a great start. And I would urge members to vote against this motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Isanti, Representative Johnson.
Madam Speaker, members, I stand in support of the Daniels motion. We've been seeing a habit this year. You might have a side-by-side. A week or 2 weeks later, there's a conference committee report without a single hearing. In the Housing Committee, we had the side-by-side. I was waiting to hear for the next committee hearing because I had amendments for that bill and for that committee to bring forward. Next thing I knew, there's a conference committee report. I was the only person on that committee that lived outside the 7-county metro area. I represented 80 counties in greater Minnesota that had no voice. This is getting to be a habit. I'm noticing this happening in a number of the conference committee reports that have come out. That's a sign of mob rule. The mob is ruling, just pushing whatever they want. You have the votes, you can do it properly. Another term for mob rule is democracy. Those with the majority win. They can push whatever they want. But this country is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic where the minority has a voice. We have laws, we have rules, and we have a constitution we follow. Unfortunately, this year, the majority is not following the rules. They're not following the Constitution of how this and the rules of how this body operates. You should feel ashamed of what you're doing. At least send this back, have an actual committee hearing discussing the changes, give an opportunity for amendments to fix some things that might need to be fixed, and do your job the proper way, the way this government was set up to be done. Please support the Daniels amendment, or motion.
The member from Traverse, Representative Backer.
Yeah, Madam Speaker and members, I know Chair Pinto and I, along with Representative Haley, we took the Bills program a couple years ago, and they talked about leadership. And leadership is really doing things that you're supposed to do when it's not easy. You know, we saw a circus in the Legacy Conference Committee report. We just had an outline. We didn't have a bill statement. The wording didn't come out till Monday. I don't know if that was worse than this, where you excommunicate one of our members from the process. I mean, this is the people's house. Members, it's the people's house. That means people, not just from one side, but everybody needs to get involved, be involved. That's why people don't like government, is when we see this. And I respect Chair Pinto, but on this one, you have it wrong. It's kind of like those old, now this will date me, those Looney Tunes cartoons when you had the Roadrunner and Coyote, and the Roadrunner could never kind of catch the Coyote. I mean, the Coyote could never catch the Roadrunner. That's what's happening right now. Us on this side, the minority and the public, can't catch what's going on here. It's like what I've talked about. We put the tires on the car real quick, we put one lug nut down, and we're going 90 miles per hour right now. And what we're doing is we're stamping over the public. If you were on our shoes, in our side, you would not like being in the shoes that we are right now. Vote to support Representative Daniels' motion to send it back to the conference committee. That's the right thing to do. Thank you, members.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. So for those of you that have had the pleasure of serving with Representative Daniels, and I came in with him as a freshman, you'll know this one thing. He is probably the most gentle, mild-mannered guy that you're ever going to work with. He has been a good friend of mine since the day we got here, and he came in, Representative Pinto, with you and I. And for a guy like Brian Daniels, or Representative Daniels, to not get the opportunity to be called in before this document was signed, I would encourage you to search yourself a little bit and think, is this the right thing? Because it's not. It is absolutely the wrong thing to do. And Representative Pinto, you listed off some things that happened in the past. I wasn't proud of those either, necessarily. But you've just justified what you're doing by pointing out bad behaviors in the past, I guess. But I'm just going to point out this one crystallizing moment once again. Brian Daniels is an absolute gem of a human being. And I am honored to call him my friend and my colleague. And you cut him out of the process. You did. You had a document at the desk, signed, ready to go, without him actually ever having the chance to have reviewed it. That's egregious. That's probably one of the worst things that you could possibly do. You're trampling on the process. But I do have an actual question about this that caused me some concern that I do want some answers to, and it's if the chair would yield, Madam Speaker.
He will yield. Representative Nash.
Thank you. And it's Representative Katiza-Watun's provision, but I don't see her, so I'll just ask the chair. On line 23.26, some of these grants to entities and youth prize is the one that is mentioned. I read the bill and I didn't really see anything in there for the scenario that if money is given to a child and that child doesn't use it, what happens to that money through youth prize when the eventuality they realize, oh, this kid moved out of state or they're not here anymore? because I do have some questions relative to that. So if you would answer that first, and then I'll keep going from there.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Nash, yeah, you will be testing my, because this was not originally my provision. First of all, I would just appreciate you highlighting. I just want folks to know the section that you're asking about on that page relates to providing some pilot sites for children's savings accounts, a program in different locations around the state. And the reason that's especially relevant to your question is that that's in use in St. Paul right now in my community. So this would be allowing other communities to give that a try for possible to see how that can work. And so to answer your specific question about, you said if a child does not use it, I believe it's the case that, and again, not the expert on this, but it's based, at least in St. Paul, the way that it works, because here's the other thing, I have to see exactly how it would work in those other communities. At least in St. Paul, I believe it's based on the child being a St. Paul resident, family being St. Paul residents. And then at that point, the money is based on that, and it is the child's then to keep as they grow up. Now, I guess if you're asking what happens if the child passes away, that kind of thing, that's maybe a different issue. But that funding is available. But again, that's how St. Paul's programs works. I could imagine the other communities, there might be some other nuances, other differences. That's part of the point of pilot programs, is to see how different things work.
Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Pinto, I'm not doing a gotcha moment. I worked in an industry for a while that we had to keep track of a thing called eschatable property. And as a lawyer, I'm sure you've been thrilled with talking about eschatable property, because who isn't excited about that? So my question, and it's not in the bill, and I don't know if Youth Prize deals with that, and Representative Norris is not here either, and that was his former employer, and I wish I could have asked him a question about that. My concern is, does it cancel back to the general fund? Does it go back to the grantor? Because there are some legal problems that would arise if it's allocated towards a person X, John Smith or whoever. My concern is it's not articulated in the bill, and that's where we actually put up the guidelines and guardrails for what we're doing. So it seems you're looking at me like, Jim, don't ask me any more questions, because I don't know. But I do have a concern on those lines. So because we can't answer that, and the two people that would actually be able to illuminate those questions are not here, I think that it merits more conversation. But I'm going to go back to the Representative Daniels thing. When I heard this in our caucus, I actually was embarrassed that the majority party would do this to arguably the nicest person here. You have never heard a fiery speech from Brian Daniels. There's time. There is time. Because that's just not how this should happen. He was in bed when you posted and then signed, apparently, and sent it to the desk. That's not good, Representative Pinto. And you're nodding, so I'm hoping that you're agreeing that is not the way we should be doing things here. So from the agreement that you seem to be nodding, I'm hoping that you will allow this to go back to conference, at least give the decency to Representative Daniels to talk about it. He was put on the conference committee for a reason. And I appreciate that, Madam Speaker, that you put him on there, because he knows a lot about this, and this is a passion for him. But inasmuch as you just assented and you've agreed to what I said, you should also put up a green vote, Representative Pinto. You have the time. Send it back. Send it back. That is the right thing to do. It is the polite thing to do. It is the proper and respectful thing to do for our friend. Send it back to committee. Thank you.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just on that, I will say, as I said in committee today, my preference would have been, and what I was nodding about is that having something come out at that hour would not have been the preference. But the thing is, the reason for that is because of the connection between this and E12. And what I'll say is, we had a series of meetings, including the one today, and I feel like I'm really proud of the work that we've done. And I do actually, Representative Nash, do just want to clarify regarding those children's savings accounts. That's the reason for pilot programs, is to be able to see how things work, to sort of maybe try in different communities a couple different options. And that's one reason to try it out a couple different ways, a couple different communities. That's the purpose of this. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Madam Speaker and members, I know that it's been a while, but you may have forgotten, Representative Pinto, the before times, how things used to work, actually. Before we ended up with this, the infamous, you may remember, before the trifecta, we had the tribunal. And the tribunal made all the decisions together. And prior to that, interestingly, legislators did their job instead. I miss those days. I miss the days when, frankly, it wasn't trifecta, it wasn't tribunal, it was a Senate and a House that did their work together. Interestingly, with divided government, a Democrat Senate and a Republican House just did their work together and got it done. And they did hold conference committees. I don't need to go through the litany. Representative Dowd went through exactly how a bill becomes a law, because as it turns out, somehow this body needed a primer. But in the before times, that's how we did things. And I get, it's interesting, you gave several examples of where that process wasn't really followed. And then you said, when those things happened, that was not the right thing to do. And you're right, that probably wasn't the right thing to do. But interestingly, when those things happened, I don't remember all the exact details. Frankly, I was a freshman that year, and it's all a blur. However, I do remember things happening like that when we were up against deadlines. I do remember that there were bills that were pushed to the 11th hour, right? And there is a constitutional deadline to end session. And when you're up against that deadline, things move really, really fast. And I get that. But now the bill author literally just told us that conference committee reports are just done this way. This is just how they're done. Two people go in a room all by themselves, decide what's going to be in the bill, and then they let everybody know. No, this is not how they're just done. In the before times, before the days of the tribunal, where the governor had preemptive veto power, where not just committee chairs, but Speaker of the House and Senate Majority Leader made all the decisions, in the before times, conference committees actually met. Do you know what? Minority members on the conference committee got to offer amendments. They got to sit in a conference committee meeting and offer amendments to the conference bill, to the conference committee report. And it's interesting, when I look at this, what happened here, I just think, you did this to Representative Daniels. I know Rep. Nash just mentioned this, and I get it. But interestingly, I already had that in my notes as well. That you did this to Representative Daniels. Frankly, it's not me. I get it. Nobody wants me in a room. But you did it to Representative Daniels. Let's go over. This is actually, you talk about how the timeline, how this went down. Let's go through this timeline, Chair Pinto. Last Monday, a week and a half ago, you talked through a side-by-side. On Wednesday, the conference committee met to adopt some same and similars. Now, interestingly, at this one, some hand-picked presenters were allowed to give presentations, I'm sure supporting the chair's position. There was no public testimony. The public was not invited to testify, but there were some presentations. I wasn't watching that day, but I have a sneaking suspicion that all those presentations supported what the chair wanted to see in this final bill. That's just a hunch, but it's probably a good guess. Then do you know what? There was not another meeting until this afternoon. There was not another meeting of this conference committee until today, until 3 o'clock this afternoon. However, in the meantime, last night, 8:20, the spreadsheet was done. And we know that because spreadsheets have a handy little timestamp on them. They have a handy little timestamp. So we know when you finished this last night, Chair Pinto, we know. It was 8:20 last night. You don't think you could have given Representative Daniels a call, a courtesy call to let him know, hey, this is finished up. Do you want to take a look? Do you just want to take a look? I know you weren't inviting him to a meeting, but do you at least want to take a look so you know what's in it? Nope, instead, 11:45 last night. I don't know about you guys, but our work had been done here for a few hours at that point. I was fast asleep at 11:45. There was no reason for me to be up. I doubt there was any reason for Representative Daniels to be awake. And he didn't get a phone call at 11:45. He got an email at 11:45 last night. And not from Representative Pinto, not from the chair of the committee, from the reviser. So thank you to our good reviser staff who had the good sense to send this conference committee report, this draft report, to Representative Daniels, because the chair sure didn't do it. And then by 8:53 this morning, that conference committee report was signed and approved. By 8:53 this morning, signed and approved. Done. And then Representative Daniels was finally invited to a committee hearing this afternoon. That was really gracious, wasn't it? I'm sure you were excited to be there, Representative Daniels. Very gracious of you to hold a fictitious conference committee meeting at 3 o'clock this afternoon, you know, to let Chair Representative Daniels, Lead Daniels, know what you had done. How gracious, how very kind of you. I'm not sure if folks are aware. I know we passed a resolution this afternoon that we're going to be done by May 18th, but we actually have until May 22nd. There's a constitutional deadline. It's May 22nd. We don't have to be done by next Thursday. And even if we were done by next Thursday, we had a week and a half. Nobody has to catch a flight tomorrow morning. That's next Friday. We got time. But this is what we're doing. But this is what we're doing. Because we've forgotten. I mean, we've seen this bastardized in this chamber all session long. New strike zones, nothing's germane, everything's out of order, or in order if that suits your needs at the moment. I mean, today we said two things were germane to one another that literally are not even in the same committee of jurisdiction, let alone the same chapter of law. It's not even close. But here we are. And now, you don't even have the decency to give them a call? You were right when you said, Chair Pinto, you were right when you said when those things happened before, it wasn't the right thing to do. But at least there was a reason for it. At least we were up against deadlines. At least there were constitutional deadlines that we had to meet. You have nothing. You have nothing that you need to meet. You got plenty of time. You got plenty of time and you couldn't even make a phone call. Send the dang bill back to committee, do it right, invite Representative Daniels to share input, invite the public to testify about what you've done. Maybe that makes you nervous. Maybe you don't want to hear what the public has to say. Maybe Representative Daniels, it's not worth having his voice represented. Maybe you don't want to hear from the 48% of this state who voted for us instead of you. Maybe you don't want to hear from them, but they deserve to be heard. This bill should go back to conference.
The member from St. Louis, Representative Zalesnikar.
Madam Chair and members, Chair Pinto, I'm rising in support of the minority leader on the committee's chair, Representative Daniels. And I think some of the things I want to point out, Chair Pinto, that I'm concerned about is the family child care. In greater Minnesota, we've lost 700 child care providers. And while there's many things in this that there are portions that are good, there is really a big gap here in this on family child care. And greater Minnesota depends on family child care because that's who's open for shift work, that's who's open on weekends, and this system is not going to solve the problems for family child care. And it's also, I think, going to have some devastation for the care centers too. And while the greater Minnesota has fewer of them, they do exist. And so there's language, and I would like it to be considered to have it deleted on section 16.17 that is talking about 4-year-olds for the early learning scholarships. Having the 4-year-olds removed from that has a huge implication to the child care centers. And I think it's important for families to have the choice because for some families, having the 4-year-old go to child care centers to learn in that model is what's best for the family, is what's best for the child. I had children, although mine are grown, I had them in the child center and also in family daycare. And both learned to read and both learned all the things that I was hoping for. And so I think that it effectively excludes 4-year-olds from the early learning scholarship. And I have great concern with that. So that's one of the things I would like, and I've shared that with Chair Pinto before. I've been very concerned about greater Minnesota and all of rural Minnesota on family child care. And I really would like to see that changed where the 4-year-olds are not part of that because it's going to decimate family child care when we're teeter-tottering significantly. The second concern I have is on the next page, which is really it's 17.21 on page 17, and I would like it to be reviewed. I think the current law is better language, which just talks about the market study, because this new language is talking about a tiered scholarship amount that could be based on many varying circumstances, and it allows the government to make decisions on geographic location and many factors instead of the market study on how it's going to fund that. And so those two things are concerning to me on how it's going to affect child daycare in greater Minnesota, where child care centers, there are some that exist, and it will hurt the centers that are focusing on providing child care. And you have families who have one child at a family daycare and the second one maybe 4 years old. My kids were 2 years apart. Many are. They want their children together, and that's just another transportation issue to run children to other things. And so I think that we need to consider the implications for family child care of what that looks like and give the family choice. So I would recommend and support Representative Daniels' motion that this goes back to conference committee. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Freeborn, Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would like to also stand in support of the Daniels motion. I've spoken with Representative Daniels at length on a number of the items in this bill. I actually used to be on the Early Childhood Committee, and Chair Pinto, I enjoyed working with you greatly. I appreciate Representative Daniels' input during the committee time so I could learn what was going on throughout the year here. But then during the conference committee time, I hate to say it, but that just kind of shut down because Representative Daniels wasn't given the opportunity to be there and really know what was going on, and especially at the end here when the report is released, that is the time where he's our representative on that committee to bring forth our concerns and say, hey, you know, why didn't we add this, or why can't we take this provision out, not only for us, but for the people we represent. So he's representing a lot of people as that one minority person on the conference committee. And as I was talking with Representative Daniels on a number of concerns that I have, one of them is in Section 5, and it's another mandate on our public schools. And we already know how many mandates we have on those schools between this bill, between the E12 bill, and more from other areas of government. Our schools are loaded down to the gills, I guess if it's a fishing weekend, right? So we can say that, with mandates. They don't need that. Well, one of the mandates that I know I spoke with Representative Daniels on, and had intended to have him ask about this and actually get it removed, was in Section 5, and it's a state mandate that requires schools, they must hire a licensed pre-K or preschool teacher. But members, it's unnecessary. Most schools already have licensed preschool teachers and pre-K teachers. So we're mandating something that they're already doing. We don't need to do that. We don't need to be telling them what to do. They're doing it already. And if they're not, there's probably a very good reason. Maybe that teacher is almost to the point where he or she is ready to take their test and become a licensed teacher, but that school has hired that person because there's nobody else. That happens often in rural Minnesota. So this is an unnecessary component. Because most teachers are already licensed. Schools can make a license required as a condition of employment. They're already able to do this. So one of my pet peeves of government is doing things that are unnecessary, and this one is unnecessary. I believe that working together makes a stronger bill, and not just working together on one side of the aisle, but working together on both sides of the aisle. And so that's why it was incredibly important for Representative Daniels to have that input, to be able to ask the questions, to be able to offer, I don't know if they're called amendments in conference committee, but just say, hey, let's take this portion out. It's not necessary. Our schools don't need it. They don't want it. It's going fine without that. So members and Madam Speaker, I do hope that we'll support this motion to send this back to conference committee so that we have an opportunity to have Representative Daniels as our member of that committee to give the suggestions that we have to help make this a better bill. Thank you, members.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Pinto, I was really concerned in caucus when I heard that, that Representative Daniels wasn't invited to the committee. I mean, my question is, I know there's been some accusations coming from this side. Would Chair Pinto stand for a question?
He will, Representative Nadeau.
Chair Pinto, can you tell me why Representative Daniels wasn't invited to the meeting that basically resulted in the spreadsheet and the final document in the conference committee report that is on my desk today?
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Representative Nadeau, so there were a couple of meetings of the conference committee at which all members were invited, including Representative Daniels. And then I had a series of conversations at various points as we're trying to work out with E12. Again, one complexity here is that there's this second budget area that is connected with this. And, it's often can be easier to work things out and to think through things sometimes in different ways, right? So to point that out, one of the conference committee meetings that we had, for example, Representative Daniels was at, this was alluded to, we had a series of presentations on several of the provisions and we had questions. That's a place where that was helpful to have that among us. In other settings, it's really helpful to be able to to talk to the chair and to try to figure pieces out, and then have, as we had, a meeting as we did today, to then walk through what we've worked, what we've worked out, what we're thinking, and then go through here. So the point is that the committee meetings that were held, all members were invited, certainly including Representative Daniels. But as I'm sure you can imagine, not every conversation I'm going to have about budget bill, I'm going to have every single person along for the ride. I say too, of course, if you have too many people around, then in fact, that's not something that can be done. So we want to make sure they're respecting that as well. Thank you.
Representative Nadeau.
Can I ask a point of parliamentary inquiry right now, Madam Speaker?
You may.
In our joint rules under 2.06, it talks about conference committees, and it talks about all conference committees shall be open to the public. Can you define what part of what Representative Pinto just talked about would not be open to the public?
Representative Nadeau, if you have questions about the process that was undertaken in this particular case, those questions are best directed to Chair Pinto. Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Chair Pinto, I'm very interested in this bill. I was the only one on this side of the aisle that voted for this bill coming out of this committee. And I can't tell you how disappointed I am that we didn't have some say in the conference the conference committee. I can't tell you how disappointed I am in that. I'm going to point you to it's section 16.13. 16.13 all the way through 17.5. I don't recall that being in the original bill that came out of this body. Was that was in there? Okay, you don't need to stand for that. And in 17.21 to 17.25, was there any changes from conference committee to that language right there? I'm sorry, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Pinto yield to a question?
He will yield. Representative Nadeau.
Was there any changes in conference committee in 17.21 to 17.25?
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Nadeau, yes. So the provision relates to establishing tiered. Well, and I'll admit you may be testing me a little bit here at this hour. I believe that there were. I may need, Representative Nadeau, on that question, I may need to consult staff to just make sure I'm giving you an accurate answer, which is, of course, important to me. I will maybe just note, as long as you would call on me, that, and I say this with great respect to my friend and former roommate, Representative Daniels, but I mean, it is the case that I had not, Representative Daniels at any point had not called or texted or emailed. I was not aware of any amendments being proposed at any point, even in terms of conversations about things. So just to say in that piece, that was not something that I was hearing anything sort of, from that side, any interest there. But regarding the piece, let me look into what you've just asked me and try to give you an accurate answer, sir.
Representative Nadeau.
And thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Chair Pinto. And I wasn't here in 2015 or 2017 or whenever, this happened before, but the fact that we didn't have the opportunity to make some of these changes, I think, is disheartening. And from that standpoint, I'm gonna stop at this point. Madam Speaker, I really support Representative Daniels' motion to re-refer, and I hope that the body would look at this and say, you know what, there's enough here. This is an important enough issue that maybe we should really try to get a lot of support on both sides of the aisle. And maybe we should send this one back and have some discussion. And with that, Madam Speaker, thank you.
The member from, I can't see, from Martin, Representative Olson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. I'm going to stand once again and have a conversation with you about how we have rules and we don't follow them, and we continually sit here and say we're doing this in a way that is just fine. It's just fine because guess what? We're in the majority, so everyone else can just sit down and be quiet. And in Representative Daniels' situation, he can just not attend entirely. That's what we're doing here, and that's what we have done consistently throughout the entirety of this session. Now, members, I would feel terrible about myself and the product that I was doing if I found every reason whatsoever to not follow my own rules. Now, if we just look back here, we've had extensive conversations about what the conference committee's job is, what the conference committee does, and why we have conference committees. Because the state constitution requires that if we're going to enact a law, both bodies have to produce something that is exactly the same. When we send something out of the House and the Senate sends something out of the Senate and they do not agree entirely, then we have our conference committees. And you all know this, or you should know this, but apparently there is a vast amount of individuals who either don't know how it works or they have just completely absolved themselves of any need to do the right thing. They've abdicated their positions. I don't know why. Maybe they didn't care enough, and they said, oh, Chair Pinto, you do it. You go with the Senate chair, and you go and hang out, go get dinner, and talk about it, and then we'll just agree to whatever you have. I would be very interested to know if anyone else who signed that conference committee report even has any idea what's in it. I would venture a guess that the majority of those people who signed their name on it in between the hours of 11:45 and 8:53 the next day even had 1 second glance at it. Now, I'm imagining that Chair Pinto has some idea what's in it, because he was the one who had the majority of all the conversation about it. But I would venture a guess that the majority of the conferees have absolutely no idea whatsoever that is in that bill, except for some of the things that they talked about in committee previously. Now, members, if we are going to abdicate our positions here, or if we're just gonna say it's not worth my time, you're telling Minnesotans that doing the right thing is not worth your own time. Why are you here? Why? You have the votes, you have the time, you can do this the right way. All Chair Pinto has to do is think to himself, what's the right thing? This could honestly be done before tomorrow morning. This could be done the right way before tomorrow. And I'll tell you how it could be done. We could refuse to adopt this committee report. We could send it back. The chair could quickly call a committee meeting. They could sit down, and they could actually just have a discussion about what's in the bill. And you know what? The chair has already made these decisions. He's already done it in conversation with the Senate. They already have made this. That's okay. You know, you've done it before. You'll do it again. You'll not include members, and people will absolve themselves, and they'll abdicate their positions, and they'll say, you go ahead, chair. You're the lead. You know everything. I have nothing to contribute because I just sit in this chair. You could do that. And you could sit there, and then Chair Pinto could go through it, and he could say, this is what we've decided. Would anyone like to provide some potential oral amendments? And then you could give Lead Daniels that opportunity to provide the amendments that we know you're not going to take because you don't care, and the ones that you have taken, you've just stripped out in conference anyways. So I don't know why I stand here and waste 10 minutes talking to you, because you don't listen anyways. You should feel ashamed of yourselves. Doing a job half-heartedly, abdicating your positions, saying Minnesotans aren't worth my time, because I'm sure you all have something better to do than improve the lives of Minnesotans. You should be ashamed. This is easy. It's easy to do the right way. Now, to all the other chairs who are doing it the right way, thank you. There's some games that have been being played, and that's just the way it goes. You know, I know there's some games that were going on in the tax committee meeting here recently, and I understand that, but at least the game is being played in the right way. Whereas Chair Pinto has completely pretended to do it the right way, and he has no intention of doing this the right way. So for those of you who are chairs over on the other side of the aisle and you're actively attempting to listen to others' opinions, even if you don't care about their opinion, but you're still giving them that shot, you're still giving them the chance to have their say, thank you for doing the right thing. Where in this case, there wasn't a single thing that was done right. I don't think there was a single thing done right. It was signed before the walkthrough. The individuals who the conferees didn't have a chance to even read it, unless they read it between the hours of 11:45 and 8:53 in the morning, and I suppose some individuals are speed readers and they can digest it pretty quickly, so maybe. But let's be real, folks. You haven't done any real work before, so why would you do it just now? You know, come on, you're abdicating your positions. So, I really highly advise you to do the right thing on this instance. But if you don't, which, let's be real, when was the last time you did the right thing? At least in the future, to all the other chairs who are working diligently to get something done for Minnesotans, just do it the right way. Because I probably will be able to stand here and poke a hole in your argument or say, hey, you know, it's not really the best bill, because let's be really quite frank, I stand on this side and there's an aisle between us. So I'm probably going to say that what you've done is garbage anyways, but at least I won't be able to attack the process in which you did it, because that's the easiest hole to poke in it. Just telling you that your bill is garbage because it was done the wrong way. I don't even have to read it. I can just look at it and say this is trash because of the way you went about doing it. At least make me work for it. Well, I'm going to poke a hole in your argument or tell you that your work is garbage. Give me some work to do. Make me read this thing. Make me look through it and say, hey, here's why it's bad. Whereas I can just say you didn't do it the right way, you don't care about doing it the right way, and you don't care about your job, and you don't care about Minnesotans. It's super easy to stand here and make that argument. So, I would advocate once more for us to refuse to adopt this committee report, send it back. Chair Pinto, do the right thing. It would take 6 minutes. You could have it done before morning, if you truly wanted to. But to all the other committee chairs, thank you for doing the right thing. Thank you for at least giving us the chance to have a say. Because here's the real deal. There are some of these committees that we haven't even had. We don't have a single Republican on. The Public Safety Committee didn't have a single Republican on it. Well, guess what? The early childhood bill didn't have any single Republican on it either. You know, you appointed one. You didn't invite him to have a conversation, so he really wasn't on it. So if you go ahead and pat yourself on the back for your bipartisan work together, you can go and throw that out the window as well. Members, refuse to adopt this. Let's do it the right way. And everyone else who's trying to do it the right way, thank you. And when you do it the right way, I won't stand here and tell you that your bill is garbage because you didn't do it the right way. I'll have to be a little bit more creative about my argument as to why it is garbage. So thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. Thank you for providing me at least this one opportunity to discuss this bill, whereas previously Republicans had not had the opportunity to discuss this conference report. So thank you for this opportunity. For everyone else, thank you for doing it the right way. I look forward to having to be a little more creative in how I tell you that your bill, in fact, is trash. Thank you, Madam Speaker and members.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I was going to do the Schoolhouse Rock, but that was taken care of earlier on. There are a lot of new members and members that came in during the pandemic, and maybe they aren't quite familiar with how things are supposed to happen. And there are people watching trying to figure out what was going on. well, I guess about 22 hours ago, there was an email went out around midnight to members of the conference committee. And there was about 7 hours ago, maybe 8, a meeting. But in between there, about 13 hours ago, the final report showed up to the desk. Normally you have the meeting to discuss the final report before you send it on to the desk, but apparently that wasn't taken care of like normal. You know, you might think Representative Daniels is a wild, up-all-night partying type person, but he unfortunately, as a freshman, got a roommate that took that all out of him. I was his roommate. I guess I was boring enough to where he was in bed at a normal time, as you know, before midnight. And with getting around and getting here, it's very logical that he never had a chance to check for the email because he didn't get a heads up that, hey, something's coming out. So he gets here and, oh, there's going to be a meeting in the afternoon. And then, oh, the report's already at the front desk. And see, he started back when we actually went to conference committee and we had testimony, we had discussion, we had debate. You could bring amendments. But apparently they didn't want to apply work to more than just the chairs, or at least just majority members. And so they didn't want to overwork and stress Representative Daniels by actually allowing him to make amendments, to debate, to give input. Because that's the way, when he started, we did it. And that's the way that the people expect it, because frankly, we have a conference committee with multiple members so we can get a diverse input, because one size doesn't fit all. What's best in one part of the state might not work in the other part, and that's why you get people talking. You come and you work together and you get a better bill. That's what I think is important. That's why we were elected. You know, we could just elect 10, 12 people if we don't want the input from all parts of the state. Each one of us is here to serve, to be a voice, to stand up and say, in my communities, we have these issues. I would like to have them addressed. I would like to debate and talk about the best way to have options that will work across the state. Now, I've worked with Representative Pinto on a lot of different things. And in fact, on human trafficking, when I was in the majority, he was in the minority, I made sure we got a hearing and helped him work on that, because that's the right thing to do. I've also worked with him on a lot of bills. I've had a fair amount of early childhood bills that have passed and become law. So I understand listening to a diverse group with maybe different opinions and trying to come up with something that will work for a greater portion of those people, or will help a group that is having problems but not penalize another group. That's what's called by legislative action. That's what's called by working together. Now, people watching from hearing this are thinking, well, it doesn't sound like that's what's happening. I don't know exactly why we've gotten into a rush instead of taking the time and due diligence and doing the best work. But it seems like that's where we've gotten to. And frankly, taking an extra day or two is better than saying, oh, we will fix it next year. We've heard that on the floor a lot too. Good idea, it's not quite worked out. Sorry, we'll do it next year. And that's why we continually have problems with daycare and other components that are so much different because children are individuals. And you can come up with a great program that works for all of them, but if you come up with options and you listen to the different groups, you come up with options, you can help the vast majority, if not all, of the kids. Because frankly, I don't want to vote for a bill that'll help 60% or 70%. I want to vote for a bill that'll help 90% or more. And I don't think we're doing that with this bill. And it's not that hard. I mean, if you've been on committee with me, I do ask some detailed questions. But I always try to aim at how can we avoid problems and fix what we've got or address the underlying issues. And if you take the time in committee and in conference committee, then we can come to the floor and it'll go quickly. You might not be unanimous, but it'll go much quicker. But human nature is that when you don't get an opportunity to talk in conference committee, to amend in conference committee, to do the duty and service that you were elected to do, then you feel frustrated. So what comes out? We stand here on the floor and we hold a lot of debate that should have been taken care of the appropriate way. Now, people watching are probably confused, but I think one thing that'd be very telling is look at how many conference committees do not have a minority member from the House. And the first time, the second, the third, the fourth, etc. It builds up the frustration that we aren't allowed to do what our people sent us here to do. I don't expect to always win. I expect to maybe once in a while win because we debate logic, reason, facts, and the best way to help our citizens. But if you pan across, there are some people that are listening, but most are, well, it doesn't matter. We got the votes. But the important thing is not having the votes. The important thing is doing the duty and service and best job for our citizens. And frankly, having both sides in the discussion helps us avoid issues and problems. That's why when I've been in the majority, I've worked with several people in the minority to try and get components that they want in bills in there so that we solve. It's not us versus them. It's us doing the job together. Winning is defined by doing the best job possible. I just wish it wasn't an empty chamber, that there were actually ears and hearts and minds that were open so we could do that better job. This conference committee report was not done the appropriate way. It wasn't allowing a voice, a caring voice, to have the input. So a lot of people think everything's done in the back room. I still hope we can do it in the committee room and on the House floor. But to do the job right, we need to refuse to adopt. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? I recognize the member from Itasca, Representative Igo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll rise today to also support this motion that we send this back to committee, and I think it's all based on one tenet, and that tenet today is respect. You know, when we are elected and we come here, there's having respect not only for this institution, respect for our office, but respect for our colleagues and for this process in itself. And I take that very close to heart, and I think a lot of us in this room do. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I think respect is one of the key tenets that we try to abide by and follow by. But what happened with this conference committee report is the farthest thing possible from respect. There was no respect here for Representative Daniels. There was no respect for the public. There was no respect for the transparency of our government and how it operates. And I think everyone should have a problem with that. You know, I don't know what happened where we've gotten to a point where it feels like respect really goes out the window a lot these days, especially in politics. You know, I don't know where the tribalism has came from, where we need to silo up on our sides of the aisles and it's us against them, and you know, this push and pull and let's lob a bomb over here and you can lob one over here. I don't understand it. Because when I'm out there talking to Minnesotans in my district or in your districts, or my friends who are scattered around the state, they're tired of it. So then why would we have an action like we just witnessed over the last 12, 24 hours here be allowed to transpire? And we can fix it. We can just send this back and we can actually have a transparent meeting. And Representative Daniels can be consulted on this. You know, it's just, if I ever have the unique opportunity to hold the gavel in this chamber, I'm never going to act the way that Representative Pinto just did. Because I want to make sure that I have the respect to listen to every person who comes to me. Because I don't know it all. I know that. But I want to learn it. And I want to learn from the different perspectives and respect them and know that I have to make a decision based on everything that I'm hearing. The easy solution was to do what just happened here today. But the hard decision would be to be in the public eye, be transparent, and have the respect to call Representative Daniels and talk to him about this. Because he is an expert on these issues. He knows these things and he's passionate about them. But don't just take my word for it. The Speaker put him on the conference committee. She wouldn't have done that if she didn't see what I see, what this side of the aisle sees. So for you not to call and give him that respect, to have him part of the conversation, come on. We can do better. Where's the Minnesotan nice? Oh, I'm getting to the one Minnesota. We're going to get there. We have a chance to fix this. We have a chance to do the right thing. We have the time, right? We have a week, I guess, left until we want to adjourn and be done here. We don't need that long a time. People have been saying it would only just take an hour or so to be able to come back and do this the right way, so the public can be there, so Representative Daniels can be there. And we can keep the spirit of this institution, the respect for the way this institution runs, going strong. And Representative Pinto, you could set a precedent. Let's set a precedent that we're going to bring respect back to this chamber. We're going to break down this tribalism and maybe, frankly, the hate that we sometimes have for each other. It's disappointing. It's sad. It breaks my heart. It's hard for me to go home to my district and talk to people and say, well, can't you just get involved? Can't you do something? Can't you? I'm trying. And I will say, there are some members in this chamber over the last month I've gotten to know very, very well. And for those over here that I've talked to for some time, I've really appreciated that. We need to do more of that. It's okay to sit down and not have to talk about policy, but get to know each other on a personal level, to respect each other for who we are and what our life experiences are, the ideas we bring to the table, and the ideas that we bring, we carry for the 40,000 people we represent. If there's any hope for this one Minnesota, it starts with everyone in this room remembering to have respect for each other in this institution and this process. And that's why we're going to send this back today. So Representative Pinto, you can get back to what this was all about, respect. Again, Minnesotans want this level of bipartisanship. What we're seeing the process treated with this year is that Minnesota is a 70% party-controlled state. It's 1% DFL on the index. Let's stop treating it like we're this DFL supermajority state. We're not. I can't remember if I've told my joke about Minnesota politics on the House floor here before, but I'm going to do it again. 30% of the state is Republicans, right? 30% of the state is Democrats. The other 40% vote for Jesse Ventura. And it's funny, but really think about that. So if you think about that, and that's actually the state of Minnesota politics, why in the world will we treat the minority caucus like they are a super minority of people that don't matter? Because it's not the case. Again, respect. Yeah, I can't get no respect. But if we want one Minnesota, we want to end this level of politics that's in our state and in our country where people are constantly bashing each other on the news or can't go to a family holiday out of threat of getting into politics. It starts with having respect for this process. And when actions like happened today from a chair of one of these committees in this conference committees works behind closed doors and then doesn't talk to one of the experts who is appointed to the conference committee by the Speaker of the Minnesota House, you're making that divide larger. But I guess if there was one good thing taught today, and it's been said there's a lot of new members in this room, they learned exactly what not to do when they get a gavel. Because we can't be treating each other like that. What is it, 40% of this legislature is brand new? Let's take note today and be better. Let's do what we're supposed to. Be one Minnesota, be Minnesota nice, have respect for the institution. And I guess the part that makes me really upset about all this is because it is Representative Daniels. And you know, him and I share a wall, our offices. And my first term during COVID, when it was really, really hard to be a new member around here, you know who I was able to bounce all my questions off of and gave me some of the best advice I had as a new member? Representative Daniels. He's a kind, compassionate man with a lot of experience around this place. So to hear that he's the person getting boxed out of a conference committee, like, that's hard to stomach and keep calm and not actually get very upset on this House floor. And I think deep down, you know it in your heart that you should have given him the respect to give him that phone call. Members, if we want this state to be better, let's do better. What was it? I think there was a senator that used to say that. What was it? When we all do better, we all do better. We can do that. Let's do it. You have the majority in the House, in the Senate, and you have the governor's mansion. We get it. And Minnesotans don't. You can do whatever you want. But why on earth wouldn't you be demonstrating how you can do it with respect and bipartisanship? Why wouldn't you do that? If the Minnesota DFL is trying to say that they are the party of Minnesota, then why wouldn't they be demonstrating that level of respect for every single Minnesotan? Because it's already been said, 48% of Minnesotans vote for Republicans. So try to have the respect for all of us in this state, for every person, no matter where they're from, their background. But if you want to keep acting behind closed doors and not have the common courtesy to give a phone call, people are going to start waking up. and you're not going to be the party of one Minnesota. So let's get back to having respect for each other, respect for the institution, respect for what we all bring to the table. And then maybe Minnesota can be that North Star that leads around this country in showing what we can do if we actually get back to what politics is all about: compromise and respect for every idea. Let's send this back. Let's do the right thing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion to the motion to refuse to adopt the report of the Conference Committee for House File 2292. I recognize the member from Isanti, Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was hoping I'd get another chance to speak on this. I did a little research in my rules book while I was listening to the debate here on the House floor, and as it turns out, it looks like we violated the joint rules. I'll call your attention to rule, I gotta get my glasses on. Call your attention to rule 2.06. There's just a one-sentence third paragraph there that says, all conference committees shall be open to the public. Go ahead and pull them out. Newly revised, too, so maybe you didn't notice that this was just recently changed. It says on the front there, adopted April 6th of 2009. So, you know, these are new things that were... and then actually the more interesting part, I think, is that next paragraph. It says, as much as practical, meetings of the conference committee shall be announced as far in advance as possible with the intent to provide a 24-hour notice. I think that's honorable, right? But I also understand in times like Representative Pinto mentioned back in the past, 2015, where we were up against a deadline and needed to pass our bills, sometimes you can't give a 24-hour notice. But the next section is actually what I want to call your attention to, and I thought that was the interesting part, that next part of that sentence, which says, and actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. What? What? Yeah, it says that in here. As much as practical, meetings of the conference committee shall be announced as far in advance as possible. That's nice. And kind of comfort language, I think, but allows some flexibility with the intent to provide a 24-hour notice, comma. And actions shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. So if Representative Pinto might yield for a question, I have a couple he might enjoy.
Representative Pinto will yield to a question. He will yield. Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Pinto, could you let me know, according to Rule 2.06, or I should say consistent with Rule 2.06 and the words, and actions shall be agreed upon in an open meeting, can you tell me the date and time of the open meeting that this conference committee report was adopted by the conference committee?
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Representative Dowd, so actions taken by the conference committee, I think is a little bit different from what we have in front of us as a conference committee report, right? And that report, as we know from past sessions and other times, can be signed by members of the committee. And so that's my understanding as to how that works. Now, I'll point out we had in this conference committee, I know this has not been the case in others, that we had several meetings, there were some motions along the way, but in the end, the conference committee report, the key thing is that be signed by members, and that's a little bit different than the actions taken in that way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Dowd.
So can you tell me, if he would yield again for a question, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Pinto will yield. Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Pinto, can you tell me what actions were taken by the conference committee? Because we have a product in front of us. I'm just really curious, what actions did this conference committee take in accordance with Rule 2.06, and specifically the part that says, and actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting? And I assume that you can only assume that any actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. And certainly this committee must have taken some actions because we have a conference committee report in front of us. So can you tell me which actions were taken by this conference committee?
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
So, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So again, and Representative Dowd, I would not consider myself an expert on this, but I will say that, again, Representative Dowd, the conference committee report is signed by the individual members. There can be actions taken along the way, and when the conference committee takes those actions, then as the sentence notes, those actions need to be agreed upon in an open meeting. But the conference committee report is something that needs, in the end, to be signed by the members of the conference committee, and the key thing is to whether those members have signed that. In the meantime, there can be actions taken, and when they're taken, certainly by the full conference committee. So, for example, Representative Dowd, what you can't do is have a quorum of members gathering and getting together and making decisions where then that's not an open meeting. That's what's written right here. And what you can have, though, is have a report that is that members can individually decide to sign. Pardon me, and that is what a conference committee report is. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Pinto. If you were Charlotte and you were weaving a web up here in the corner of the House chamber, it would say SOS on it right now. That's for sure. Because that was the most creative web weaving I have heard in a while here in the House floor, that adoption of a conference committee report isn't an action, apparently. What does a conference committee do here in the House? Maybe we need a full session on how a bill becomes a law. Just the basics. What is it that a conference committee does here in the House chamber? Or not in the House chamber, in the House of Representatives. What does a conference committee do? Certainly they don't take any action, apparently, but somehow magically we have a conference committee report that is here for consideration in front of the House chamber. And the chair of the committee, the House chair of the committee, has told us that it is a normal procedure for the two chairs to just get together and decide what's going to be in that report and have it issued after the members of the conference committee have gone to bed at 11:45 p.m. And then magically some members have signed that conference committee report and it gets filed at the desk at 8:53 the next morning, this morning, but not all members got the opportunity to have it or see it. I'm told that our staff reached out to nonpartisan staff asking for this morning when they saw the conference committee was at the desk, and asked for a spreadsheet on the bill, which is, the spreadsheet for those of you watching at home. The spreadsheet is what gives us the fiscal accounts and tells us where what everything's costing and where the money's moving in the bill. And we were told that they had not been authorized yet to release that to us after the conference committee report was filed at the desk. Maybe they were waiting for the conference committee to take some action, I don't know, in an open meeting. Nonetheless, all conference committees shall be open to the public. So I assume what the chair was weaving there when he said that apparently he thinks this language means that if there is a group of members from the conference committee, thank you, if there's a group of members from the conference committee, a quorum of members, more than a majority from either body, getting together, that must be open to the public, and that a quorum can't take action unless it's in public. I don't even know. That was quite the weaving. But the rules are clear. As much as the chair's answer wasn't clear here on the House floor, the rule is very clear. 2.06. All conference committees shall be open to the public, period. And then later on, and actions taken, it doesn't say some actions, it says actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. Period. Actions taken by the conference committee shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. And all meetings of the conference committee shall be open to the public. That's in our joint rules, which I understand they're new. We adopted them on April 6th of 2009. So this is new policy. I understand how maybe you wouldn't have known. I do appreciate the chair saying he's not an expert on the joint rules. But if you're going to chair a conference committee, we should be reading these rules. And members, this should not be before us. We have violated the rules. And we have violated, not we haven't, I haven't, you have. You have violated the public's trust. You took actions that did not take place in an open meeting. How does a conference committee report get signed by a majority of the members without a meeting ever happen and get filed at the desk? Didn't happen in an open meeting because there wasn't one. And it was an action. Just the majority of members signing the document is an action. That is adoption of a conference committee report. That did not happen in an open meeting, and it is a clear violation of our joint rules. And there's no wiggle room. None. All conference committees shall be open to the public, and actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. Period. There's no comfort language like there is on calling a meeting. As much as practical, meetings of a conference committee shall be announced as far in advance as possible, with the intent to provide a 24-hour notice. That's what we would call comfort language here in the legislature. That's the one that says, you know what, we're going to do our best to make sure the public has as much notice as possible before we have a conference committee so that they can participate. Because there is a rule just above that that says all conference committees shall be open to the public. So we see very firm language, all conference committees shall be open to the public, and then comfort language about how much notice we give to the public. And then firm language, which says, and action taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting, period. Members, we cannot adopt this conference committee report. We must send it back because you have violated House rules. We heard direct testimony from one of the members of the conference committee who didn't even get presented with the conference committee report to ask him to sign it. But a majority of the members had signed the conference committee report. I assume there's, Mr. Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry.
Representative Dowd, please state your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Can you let me know, Mr. Speaker, how many signatures are on that conference committee report from each the House and the Senate?
Representative Dowd, there are 6 conferees total for House File 2292. They were signed by 2 members from the House and 2 members from the Senate, so 4 out of the 6. Representative Dowd.
Thank you.
Representative Dowd, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that. And what you just told me also leads me to, I misspoke earlier when I said this was a 5-member conference committee. It obviously was a 3-member conference committee. So 3 from the House, 3 from the Senate, and which is absolutely in the rules, that's allowed. In this case, 2 members from the Senate and 2 members from the House. I'm going to just assume, although maybe I should ask, I'm going to assume that that's 2 Democrats from the House and 2 from the Senate, and that there was probably a Republican from the House and a Republican from the Senate on the conference committee. My colleague here, who was on the conference committee, maybe in name only, just verified for me that that was the case. So there obviously was action taken by a majority of the members of the conference committee, because we have 2 signatures from the House and 2 signatures from the Senate. That's a majority of the members from the House and a majority of the members from the Senate have signed the conference committee report. So that is an action that was taken. That action was taken outside. We already have verification of that by the chair of the conference committee, that there was not a public meeting that was open to the public. That's a violation of our joint rules. So we have verification that this is illegal. It's a violation of our House rules. There was an action taken. When they signed that conference committee report, they adopted it. And they accepted those changes. Those actions were taken outside of a meeting that was open to the public, and frankly, outside of a meeting. My guess is that probably there was a majority of members that met, or potentially, and it was a violation of, I don't even know if it would be a violation of open meeting law. It does say, conference committee shall be open to the public and actions taken shall be agreed upon with an open meeting. And the chair of the committee just told this chamber that a majority of the members cannot meet together. Would Representative New yield for a question?
Representative New Brindley will yield to a question. Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it appears that Representative New Brindley has looked into this issue and maybe could shed some light on it for us. So, Representative New Brindley, can you let us know how that works? And, you know, I think we've kind of together laid out the case here that we have at best violated our joint rules, and that this is improperly here before the House, and maybe at worst violated law. But can you fill us in on that?
I recognize the member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Leader Dowd. As I was listening to Chair Pinto, I noticed that he referenced sort of open meeting law, that they weren't allowed to meet in quorum. And so I immediately kind of perked up because I thought, wait a minute, open meeting law doesn't actually apply to the legislature. Not the same way that it does to like our local municipalities. And so I looked because I thought, well, I looked through the joint rules, and we went through the entire joint rules. It doesn't talk about that. It just talks about taking action, right? And so then we went to, let's see here, the open meeting law statute. It's section 3.055, open meetings. And it says, I'm not going to read everything, but it says, for the purposes of this section, a meeting occurs when a quorum is present and action is taken regarding a matter within the jurisdiction of the body. So the body in this instance being the conference committee. That would be that joint body. But so it's only in violation of open meeting law if a quorum is present and they take action. So it certainly would not, as Chair Pinto indicated, be in violation of open meeting law for members to chat, for them to talk to Representative Daniels and let him know what's going on. That would not be a violation of open meeting law. Correct, unless they take action. If they take action, then that is a violation of open meeting law. If they don't do that in a public open meeting, if action is taken, then that does fall under open meeting law. Action must be taken by a quorum in an open meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Pinto, if he would yield for a question, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Pinto will yield to a question. Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Pinto, based on the information that Representative New has just dug up in our own state statutes, and I apologize that the hole is getting a little deeper. Hopefully you can still see me over here. Could you let me know what open meeting and how that was posted, that open meeting? How did you post that open meeting where you adopted the conference committee report? Because we do know now that there are a majority of the members who have signed the conference committee, so we know that there was an action taken, and you're saying that you couldn't take an action in a meeting that was not open, and our rules, and now we're told that according to open meeting law, you're required to have an open meeting to take action. The signing of the conference committee report is taking action. So a majority of the members now have taken action. Can you let me know when that meeting was and how it was posted publicly? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of parliamentary inquiry.
Representative Pinto, please state your point of parliamentary inquiry.
In responding to a question, am I allowed to ask Representative Dowd whether he may yield to a question?
No, you're not, Representative Pinto, but I can give the floor back to Representative Dowd, and then you can seek the floor.
Maybe I'll just ask. Maybe I'll just say this. So Representative Dowd, when I look, so my apologies about the error on the open meeting law, and I'm not giving legal advice here, right? And no expert on that, so my apologies. I guess I'll note as I'm trying to interpret the rules, and this is what I want to ask Representative Dowd. So I had referenced when he was Speaker in 2017, the HHS budget bill.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Representative Dowd, please state your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The discussion that he's about to have is not relevant. We're right now on the order of business of refusing to adopt this conference committee report on this day, not something that happened 5 years ago. So that line of questioning is out of order.
Representative Pinto, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And so I guess what I was going to do is try to get some help in interpreting the rules. Representative Dowd had asked a question, and I'm trying to figure out about interpreting the rules and was hoping that he might be able to help me interpreting the rules, that if there is a budget bill that never has a conference committee meeting at all, if he could help me understand as to how that is consistent with the rules. Apparently it was, and these rules have been the same for a number of years, and so I'd really appreciate his interpretation of Rule 2.06 in the joint rules. I'm not an expert on it, and I know we've got some great expertise in the chamber. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the question, Representative Pinto. But rather than us explore hypotheticals, let's actually talk about what's actually before the body right now, which is this conference committee report. And actually, I don't believe it should be before the body because we have very clearly violated the rules. So I'll just ask if he will yield one more time for a question, Mr. Speaker. If
Representative Pinto will yield to a question. Representative Dowd.
Thank you. If he would just let us know now that we know that it is required to have a meeting and that all action must be taken in an open meeting, and we know that action was taken on this bill, if he can let us know when that meeting happened and how it was posted publicly.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I'm going to a little bit confused by the assumption in the question that it's necessary to have a meeting, and I will say that only because I know that in the past, under past leadership in the chamber, it was not necessary to have a meeting, and so I'm just trying to interpret the rules
Mr.
in that
Speaker,
way.
point of
Thank
parliamentary
you.
inquiry.
Representative New Brindley, please state your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm trying to understand. I know that we keep asking Representative Dowd what the rules mean, but who in the chamber is the arbiter of interpreting the rules?
Representative New Brindley, if you would raise a point of order, or if anyone in this chamber would raise a point of order, it is up to the presiding officer to rule on points of order. And then the body can appeal the ruling of the speaker, and then the body decides the outcome of that interpretation of the rules. Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the speaker interprets the rules. Thank you.
Representative Dowd, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we may have gotten just a little bit lost there. He actually had the floor. He was yielding for my question, and I can repeat it just because I want to make sure everything's clear here. If he would continue to yield, but he had agreed to. And
Representative Pinto will continue to yield. Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that. We want to follow our protocol, and ultimately we want to follow our rules here, I think. So now that we know that a conference committee, all conference committee meetings shall be open to the public, and now that we know that any actions taken by a conference committee must happen in an open meeting, and we know that action was taken because we have a signed conference committee report by a majority of the conferees in front of us, so that is an action. If he could let me know when that meeting happened and how and when it was posted publicly.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Representative Dowd, I guess your question is based on interpretation of the rules, and that's the thing that I'm struggling with because I know, it's what I'm trying to understand, and again, I'm hoping that you or somebody else is going to be able to help with this. when we've had, I had mentioned, I know there have been a number of times, there was another time in 2017, and the only reason I'm bringing this up, Representative Dowd and others, is just that as I'm trying to interpret, because you're asking me to sort of interpret the rules, I know that in 2017, the Environment Budget Bill, that had a very similar process. I gather I'm just trying to understand that interpretation of the rules, and so perhaps you or someone else can help me, because I know this is in fact been the case. Since it's sort of a question about interpreting the rules, we want to make sure that we do that. We've had a number of those instances that I gather the Speaker at the time did in fact rule that those were consistent with the rules. I know that Environment Budget Bill, there was a parliamentary inquiry at that time, the House File 888 in 2017, and the Speaker at the time did indicate that there was not a problem with that. So thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Pinto. And apparently we've got our wires crossed here. I was not in any way asking you to interpret the rules. I simply asked you the question, when was your meeting and how did you post it publicly? The rules are clear. They don't need interpretation. I'll read them again, just in case you didn't think they were clear. 2.06, joint rules of the House and Senate adopted on April 6, 2009, just so we're all following along in the same place. 2.06, go to the third paragraph. It's a one-sentence paragraph. All conference committees shall be open to the public. And then the third line down in the next paragraph, I'm just going to read after the comma. It says, and actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. I think we can assume that's all actions because it says, and actions taken. But I'm not asking you, Representative Pinto, to interpret the rules. The rules are crystal clear. And you took action because we have a signed conference committee report that the Speaker has verified has a majority of the members that have signed from each body. I don't know. You think that's not an action? That's approval of a conference committee report. That's an action. Actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. All conference committees shall be open to the public. The rules are crystal clear. I'm not asking for you to interpret that. No interpretation's needed. I'm just asking, when did that meeting happen? Because my member is telling me that there was no meeting. That there was no meeting. And that a conference committee, the revisor's office posted a completed conference committee report, which the next morning when he woke up and looked at it, when it was brought to his attention, he was shocked. Because he didn't go to any meeting. He wasn't invited to a meeting. He didn't have an opportunity to discuss the conference committee report. He didn't get to make amendments. He didn't get to discuss the actions that were taken, and actions were taken, or we wouldn't be here right now. At 11:45 p.m. last night, the conference committee report was posted by the revisor's office. That's the normal procedure. And the conferees are notified via email that that conference committee report is posted. And then, sometime between 11:45 last night and 8:53 this morning, that conference committee report showed up at the House desk with 4 signatures on it, 2 House members and 2 senators, a majority of the members of the conference committee from both houses of the legislature. It showed up here at our front desk. So an action was taken. I assume that action was probably taken before 11:45 because you instructed them to prepare a conference committee report. But I think you could actually do that. I agree with you, Representative Pinto. I think you can call the revisor's office and you can say, can you prepare a conference committee report for us? And they'll do that, and then you go to a conference committee meeting that is open to the public, pursuant to Rule 2.06 in the joint rules, and you talk about the conference committee report, or at the very least say, I make a motion to adopt the conference committee report, and then you take action in an open meeting. But you violated that. You took action, you've got signatures, and I think now we have found out that that action is actually a violation of the open meeting law. Because you've got signatures on a conference committee report and there was no meeting. And I wasn't really aware of that. I think you're the one that kind of brought that to our attention, and then thank you to Representative New for looking into that a little bit. But these are serious allegations. Now, there may be a violation of law. And I don't know what the penalty is. Maybe somebody's looking for that. But I assume there's some penalty if you violate open meeting law. Maybe a criminal penalty even, I don't know. If somebody's looking for that, I don't know. I'm just wondering if there's some sort of penalty for violation of open meeting law. If it's a criminal penalty or a civil penalty, I don't know. But it is very clear in our joint rules that all conference committees shall be open to the public and actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. But here we are, in the dark of night again, 11 p.m., with a conference committee report that somehow magically got signed. And it came to our front desk at 8:53 this morning without members of the conference committee even knowing that this conversation had happened. Didn't even know there was a report. All of a sudden it's signed and it's at the front desk. Somebody just handed me a document which describes the open meeting law and common questions about the open meeting law. The penalties for violations of an open meeting law are court-imposed fines and, in some cases, forfeiture of office. This came right off the Department of Administration Data Practices website. It's a little fact sheet on the open meeting law. The penalties for violation of the open meeting law are court-imposed fines and, in some cases, forfeiture of office. We're talking about serious stuff here, members. And I think we're kind of uncovering this together. I mean, I didn't even think about the open meeting law aspect until Representative Pinto brought it up. I simply was hung up on this Rule 2.06 from our joint rules. All conference committees shall be open to the public, and all actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. You know, and you can reference 2015 and you can reference 2017 all you want, and you can blame your bad behavior on somebody else's bad behavior in the past. But you know what? Most of the members that were here then aren't here now. And even the ones that are, including myself, can't remember. So while you think you've got the receipts, we've got receipts on this bill stamped last night at 11:45 and at 8:53 this morning, which shows there was a violation of joint rules and potentially a violation of open meeting law. And you can blame all the boogeymen of the past for your bad behavior. But the reality is, what you're doing right now is wrong. And we can't adopt this conference committee report and pass this bill out. I assume there's even potentially, if I read far enough, a potential that it throws this bill itself into question. It could be litigated and could be thrown out by the courts because we didn't follow our own rules and we didn't follow law. And I know this body has a history of kind of looking the other way on law because we write the laws, right? So we just, the old notwithstanding, but there's not a notwithstanding on this one. This one either is a violation or it's not. You either had a meeting to take action or you didn't. And I apologize. You actually do have protection from your confession of breaking law tonight here on the House floor because the Constitution does say that you cannot be questioned in any other place for something you say on this House floor. So you might be off the hook from being thrown out of office because you confessed your crime here on the House floor. But it still doesn't make it right. It still doesn't make it right. Because the public didn't have a say, the members of the legislature didn't know, and our rules don't say that two chairs can go off into a dark, smoky room and play rock, paper, scissors, or whatever version of decision-making you want to engage in to determine what should be in the conference committee report. and they don't allow two chairs in the dark of night in a smoky back room to take action on behalf of the conference committee. And when a majority of the members sign a conference committee report, that is taking action, and that is a violation of the joint rules of the Minnesota House and the Minnesota Senate. So I don't know what we do here, members. And then we've got the question of whether or not we've violated open meeting law. I think to be safe, we should send this one back. We should send this back to conference committee, and we should let them actually do their job. We've got plenty of time. By the way, I know somebody said apparently there's a resolution that the House has passed. I found it here on my desk, actually, earlier today, which said upon adjournment on May 18th. So there's some optimistic thinking that we'll be out of here on May 18th. I will remind the body that this is a concurrent resolution, which means the Senate also needs to adopt this resolution, which they have not. Our constitutional deadline is the following Monday night. I believe that's the 22nd at midnight. So we have plenty of time. We have a week and a half, more than a week and a half, to consider all of this. We've got plenty of time to send this back, and there's no reason that this body should be arguing about procedure for 2 hours on a Friday night in the dark of night. There's no reason that should be happening. And Mr. Speaker, would Representative Pinto yield for a question?
Representative Pinto will yield to a question. Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Pinto, when was the spreadsheet adopted in an open meeting of the conference committee? That is an action that would have been taken by the conference committee. When was that spreadsheet adopted for this bill in an open meeting by the conference committee?
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So Representative Dowd, I think we're sort of back at the same spot. This caused me to sort of scratch my head a bit. You said before that you weren't asking me to interpret the rules, but you had specifically asked me earlier. You read the sentence or read the phrase "actions taken shall be agreed upon in open meeting." You asked for my interpretation of it. You may remember, just to remind you, it's been a little while now, quite a while maybe, where I said that I'm not an expert on the rules because you'd asked me about the rules. And so that's the thing that I guess I'm struggling with a bit, is that it seems like your question is sort of requiring an interpretation of the rules just as you'd asked me to provide. And so in that way, I'm kind of at a little bit of a quandary. That's why I've been hoping to get your interpretation to understand the rules in Rule 2.06. So that's the challenge that I kind of have in answering your question right now. Thank you.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Pinto. And to be very clear, these are the joint rules, and I am going to set them way over here because I'm not talking about those right now. Okay, so visually now they're not in my hand, they're not on my desk. You cannot see them here. I'm not referring to those. The question that I'm asking you right now is, when did you adopt the spreadsheet for this bill in an open meeting of the conference committee? If he would yield for a question, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Pinto will yield to your question. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Representative Dowd, I guess I'm confused then if we're not referencing the rules, and if you just explain to me sort of the background of your question, because I guess I thought if I could just understand, because I guess what is the relevant? I guess I'm trying to understand the relevance if you're saying you're not referencing Rule 2.06. So if he may, I guess I can't really ask him to yield, but if you understand. Thank you so much.
Representative Dowd.
If somebody could provide me with a copy of the spreadsheet for this bill, I'd like to hold that up so he can recognize what we're talking about right now. This is it right here. Here it is. It's magically appeared. This is the spreadsheet for the bill. When was this adopted by the conference committee? So this is the spreadsheet that goes through the financials of the bill. Not talking about the rules anymore. I've moved on, and I apologize. I know sometimes I do get wrapped around the axle on something. I just moments ago was wrapped around the axle on the rules. I have released myself from that. Now I'm over here with the spreadsheet. Here it is. I'm going to see if there's a timestamp on here. What's the date today? 12th. It's a spreadsheet for the early education budget bill updated 5/11, May 11th, 2023 at 8:20 p.m. So that's last night. That does not mean it was adopted at that time. It just means that's when this draft of it was prepared. Maybe we can make this a double hitter question. Is this the most recent version? And when was this adopted by the conference committee? If he would yield for that question, Mr. Speaker. Can I hold that?
Representative Pinto will yield. Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Dowd, and my apologies now. I feel like I understand what you're saying. So we're not talking about the rules. We're talking about like the practicality of it, and so this was reviewed today. There was a walkthrough today. Folks in the public got a chance to. It was posted earlier, but then there was a conference committee meeting today. I know that hasn't always happened in the past, but that happened today of going through this. So it was reviewed. So if we're talking about the rules, that's one thing, but I know you said to set aside the rules. We're just talking about the practical impact. And the practical impact then is that, understanding this, the committee, this was reviewed today, earlier this afternoon as we walked through it. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Pinto, and I appreciate that. And I will try to be a little better and clearer about when we're talking about the rules and when we're not. So on the spreadsheet, and I appreciate the careful language that you're choosing now, that the spreadsheet was reviewed, but it probably was not adopted, because now you know that would be a violation. Oh, I probably shouldn't talk about the rules, or I'll confuse the issue here. But that would be a violation of the rules if you adopted the spreadsheet and you were not in a meeting. However, you were in a meeting today, so you certainly could have. But I noticed very carefully you did not use the word adopt the conference committee, the spreadsheet. You used the word reviewed the spreadsheet. And I assume that you also reviewed the conference committee report, but did not adopt it. Mr. Speaker, if he would yield for a question.
Representative Pinto will yield to a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Pinto, did you, in your meeting today at 3 o'clock, which I think is the first one you've had since May 3rd, in your meeting at 3 o'clock today, did you adopt the conference committee report? Was there a motion in that public meeting where someone said, I move to adopt or accept this conference committee report? And then the second part of that question is, did you adopt this spreadsheet, or did you just review the two of those things in a public meeting after the signatures had been put on the document and after it had been placed on the desk approximately, what is that, 8 hours later? So if you could answer those two questions, Representative Pinto. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Dowd, and you're talking to a lawyer, and I want to make sure I'm being careful with language because you're telling me not to reference the rules. So I guess what I'll do is what happened in the meeting today was that the committee met. They're all 6 members of the public, et cetera. We walked through, we reviewed the spreadsheet carefully, reviewed the conference committee report, asked her questions at each point, talked where each of the provisions came from, and very open questions. And then that was the process that would happen. I should say, anticipating a question perhaps, there was not a motion that was made during the meeting today, if that's helpful to you in your questioning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Pinto. So now I think we're starting to put the building blocks together on this. So there was action that was taken. We know, we verified that now, but it was not taken in a public meeting. And then when we did have a public meeting, we did not take any action. So that's what we have now laid out here on the House floor. And I actually should encourage you, rather than be careful with your words, you should just get all of it out. Because of your constitutional protection that whatever you say here on the House floor, you cannot be questioned in any other place. If there is a crime here, you actually can't be prosecuted if you confess to it here on the House floor. But if you don't, you're probably in trouble if there is a violation of open meeting law here and a judge decides that you should be removed or could be removed from office. So I don't know. I'm not an attorney like you are or the counselor in the back over there. But, and I don't know if we've got constitutional lawyers in the chamber here, but in section 10 of our Constitution, what I am talking about here, oh, Representative Niska, apparently a constitutional lawyer. What I'm talking about in our Constitution, and I am not, and I don't play one on TV, but we do make laws here, and the decision we make are serious. So section 10 of your Constitution, for those following along here in the House chamber, and apparently some of you find this entertaining. I've noticed now quite a few more are following along. I appreciate that. I do try to make these entertaining because I do feel like you listen a little more if I kind of entertain you while I'm doing it. But I don't want that to displace the fact that we are talking about very serious issues here and potentially crimes. But section 10 of our Constitution, privilege from arrest. The very last sentence of that paragraph in section 10 of our Constitution, for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. So I'm not an attorney. I am not your attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice, but if I were you, I'd confess it all right now. I'd get it out. Just get it out. And if I can be helpful in that, because I'd hate to see you go to jail or be removed from office, I want to play that part. So the reason I'm asking you about the spreadsheet, Representative Pinto, is that our staff this morning, when they realized that there had been a conference committee report posted at filed at the front desk with a majority of the signatures of both houses of the conferees that were on that conference committee, which signifies an action that was taken, adoption of that conference committee report by the conference committee. And we do know now that that was a violation of our House rules and probably a violation of law, although ultimately that's up to a judge whether you'll remain here in this chamber. But I will say that this email thread, our staff asked, the nonpartisan staff, and I'll just read it from the email. Since the conference committee report is already at the front desk and thus already approved, can you please send me the spreadsheet? That was at 10 o'clock this morning. And then that nonpartisan staff replied with, I'm afraid I have not been authorized to do so. And we do know that that spreadsheet and the conference committee report were not adopted in the public meeting that you did have, which I assume happened around 3 o'clock. It was noticed for a 3 o'clock meeting. I'm assuming it happened at that time. So we've got a lot of problems here, members. And we owe it to the people that came before us here in this chamber and the people that elected us to serve in this chamber to sort this problem out together. And I think we've done that, actually. I think we've done that. And the only reasonable action left that we can take is to refuse to adopt this conference committee report, to send it back to the conference committee, to let them actually gotta find the rules here. I'm bringing them back in, Representative Pinto. So fair warning, we're talking about the rules again. Consistent with how, Joint Rule 2.06, all conference committees shall be open to the public, and actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. That is crystal clear. We don't need to interpret that. What we need to do is follow that. And there is a reason, members, that all conference committees shall be open to the public. That's what we call transparency. This is the people's house. We are each elected by 43,500 approximately. Not all of those people voted for us, but a majority did in each of our districts. And they sent us here to do their work and to do the best job that we can and to do it in the most ethical, transparent, and effective way that we can. And I think they expect us to follow the rules. I think they expect us to follow law. I think they know or expect that we know that we're not above the law. Except when we do stuff like this. When we do stuff like this. When we don't, we already, it's all on the record now, right? We fleshed it all out. This conference committee took action. It adopted a conference committee report. We know that because there is a conference committee report filed at the front desk that has a majority of the signatures of the members of the House, and it has a majority of the signatures of the member of the Senate that served on that conference committee. That is a majority of the members of the conference committee that took action on that conference committee report. So we know that action was taken, but we know that action wasn't taken in an open meeting. And then we do know that at 3 o'clock this afternoon there was an open meeting, and at that open meeting no action was taken. So I'm very confused why we're here tonight and why there's a conference committee report in front of us. I'm very confused why we think we're respecting people who sent us here when we act like that. Why we didn't let them come in and actually hear the debate and the conversation about what provisions we should take from the House and what provisions we should take from the Senate, or maybe find compromise between the two. But I actually think the public has lost faith in the legislature. There were just some numbers out recently about the approval rating of the legislature, and I think it was in the low 30%, if I remember right. So about 1/3 of people think the legislature's doing a good job, which means about 2/3 of Minnesotans don't have trust in what you're doing, which that number actually will increase now after this speech. And now that we have exposed the lack of transparency, the violation of our joint rules, and potentially the violation of law. Because I know how many Minnesotans are watching this at home, and I know, now that we have fleshed out all of the process on what happened on this bill, that you have now cost us on the trust the public has in us. And I'm angry about that, because I take my job here very seriously. I want my constituents to trust that I'm here doing the best job that I can for them. And it really irritates me when we, or you, I guess in this case, because I didn't, but in this case you let them down. So, members, we have only one choice in this case, which is to vote in favor of this motion to refuse to adopt and send this conference committee report back to the conference committee and let them do their work. And they can meet, they can literally meet with a 1-minute notice. If we sent this back to them right now, they could meet with a 1-minute notice. Let's say a 10-minute notice. They could meet at 11:30. They could adopt this conference committee. They could, you should talk about it. You should take some time, talk about it. You actually have, according to our rules, until midnight. Is it midnight or 1 a.m.? Conference committees are not allowed to meet between midnight and 7 a.m., right? Midnight? Yeah, midnight, okay. I have to, and I think maybe there's a rule that says the speaker can allow them to go 1 extra hour. Is that right? Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, so we should send this back. The conference committee can meet literally right now, and then spend some time. Don't ram it through. At least pretend. I mean, pretending is not that hard. But I'll tell you what, when you've got complete control of state government, even pretending has gotten tough, hasn't it? I mean, it's exhausting, isn't it? The burden that you're carrying around. To have to pretend? Oh, it exhausts me just thinking about what you must be going through. But let's send this thing back Let the conference committee actually go through the side-by-sides, talk about whether the House position or the Senate position is right. You know, the two chairs. I think what a beautiful opportunity for you as the chair to go through and talk about with the conference committee why you all made these decisions in that dark, smoky back room in the dark of night. And just talk about, hey, we did this because we thought this was important, and this is why, and maybe it works better than that because of this. That's the opportunity that you should have taken. And what that does is it actually builds some consensus and it builds some support in the chamber. And then Brian Daniels would have come into our caucus meeting and he would have said, you know what, guys? Unfortunately, I don't like all the provisions in this bill, but we went through a really thorough process and we talked about it and we debated it, and they went through a really thorough process and they came up with what they thought was best, and the majority of the members of the conference committee voted that way. So this report is what they want, it reflects what the conference committee wants. Unfortunately, right now, we can't say that. But how great would that be? I mean, how good would people at home think we're doing? I actually feel guilty right now because I'm keeping all of Minnesota up listening to this speech right now. But as riveting as it is, it's important. And that's how this body should function. It would be great if Representative Daniels would come to our caucus meeting and say, hey, this is what happened. You know, we talked about this, and when members ask a question because they might have constituents that care a lot about a certain provision in this bill, they ask him a question, he can say, you know what? This was the conversation we had in conference committee. Let me tell you about it. And this is why they came to that decision. And I actually disagreed with that, or I agreed with that, but this is why it happened. But when we went in caucus, everybody was like, what the heck? Did anybody pay any attention to the rules? Anybody pay any attention to anything? How did we get here? How is this conference committee report in front of us? We spent the whole time talking about what? 11:45 last night, this thing parachuting from the sky after members are in bed in the dark of night. And then 8:53 this morning, it magically shows up. There was no meeting between 11:45 last night and 8:53 this morning. But magically it shows up with a majority of the signatures on it at the front desk. And poor Representative Daniels took the brunt of that in caucus. He doesn't deserve that. All he could do is sit there and say, I don't know why they don't like me. I don't know why they didn't include me. You want to do that to him? He's probably the second nicest guy in the chamber. I am not that arrogant. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about Representative Paul Anderson from my previous speech this session. Isn't it? I sit by all the nicest people right here. But we can't, I mean, he doesn't deserve that. I heard somebody else say earlier, the Speaker of the House appointed him to serve on the conference committee. Why don't you trust the Speaker? Why don't you trust the Speaker who appointed him? I didn't appoint him. Trust me, if I had appointed him, I expect you to shut him out. But you know what? The rules don't give me that right. They did at one time here. They don't right now. I don't have the right to put people on a conference committee. But the Speaker chose him. The Speaker wanted him on the conference committee. And you guys just, we don't want him to be any part of it. I didn't read the rest of that sentence from the nonpartisan staff. I'm afraid I have not been authorized to do so. Maybe you can get it from the Senate. We had to get the spreadsheet from the Senate because you wouldn't give it to us. It's a good thing you didn't have a meeting. withholding information, keeping Representative Daniels in the dark. You know, there is actually a reason why. It used to be that we would say, if you want to be on the conference committee, you had to vote for the bill. In recent years, and I give Speaker Hortman credit, not all of the credit, this is a conditioned statement, don't clip that. This is not an endorsement. But I do give her credit because she understands, just as I did when I sat up there, that there's a benefit to having a minority member on the conference committee. And that benefit is we go into caucus, as we did for an hour and a half tonight before session, and we talk about what's in the conference committee report that we're going to be voting on. And it's really great if you've got a member who sat in the conference committee and can brief the caucus and answer the questions. So in recent years, generally, did not happen on some bills this year, which I'm disappointed in, but we have put minority members on the conference committee, whether they voted for the bill or not. And if you're worried about your members and how your members are going to vote, do a 5-member conference committee, put 4 majority members and 1 minority member on the conference committee, but at least that minority member can come into our caucus and brief the caucus on what happened in conference committee. Now, in this case, he can't do that. So you might as well have just followed the other bills, like the public safety bill. Wait. No, we had one on public safety, did we? We did not. What other ones? Environment and public safety. No minority member on the conference. I mean, this is the same. You might as well have done this. And maybe we're unraveling more here. Maybe now I'm just realizing why you didn't put minority members on those conference committees. Because they're probably not meeting. And they're probably adopting stuff in the dark of night in smoky back rooms. I'm hoping this isn't a pattern. I'm hoping that this was just a one-time error by a chair who admitted that he is not an expert on the joint rules. But I do, just so we don't have to have this, how many bills do we have left to take up here on the House floor? How many omnibus bills? 9 more after this? Hopefully we don't have to have this conversation 9 more times. I am enjoying it, though. If we need to, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. But hopefully we don't have to. So hopefully we can learn from this and we can actually have conference committees and we can include, you know what, frankly, if you don't want to include the minority member, at least invite them, but if you don't want to let them talk, I will trade you, at least let the public talk. At least let the public testify in the conference committee. At least you can do that level of pretending. I wish I didn't have to say pretending. But members, this is important. I just want to make sure I've covered all my material here. This is important. It's not, I know we're kind of joking about it and laughing about it once in a while here, and I know there are serious issues, and one of our members may need to get legal counsel. But the public deserves to know what's happening in these conference committees. And just because one party controls all of state government, by the way, very narrowly, 1 seat in the Senate, 3 seats in the House, very narrowly, you do not have a mandate to trample on the public. You do not have a mandate to ignore people in my district, and you do not have a mandate to ignore people in Brian Daniels' district. You have an obligation to do the best job you can, the most transparent job you can, and the most ethical job you can. And let's actually solve some of the biggest problems that are facing the state of Minnesota. Not the ideological crap that your base wants you to pass. You're representing every Minnesotan when you serve here in the House. start acting like it. Because they are watching. They're watching tonight, and I fear our numbers are going down minute by minute here when they're finding out what you're actually doing. So members, I'm going to ask you and make a plea one last time. The conference committee did not meet in an open meeting until 3 o'clock today, after they had taken action and adopted a conference committee report that apparently happened in a closed meeting, which is a violation of our House rules and apparently a violation of state law. We don't know or don't think that a spreadsheet was ever adopted by the conference committee. And we certainly didn't have enough respect for the Speaker of the House, who appointed the members of the conference committee. We didn't have enough respect for the Speaker to actually take any input from the members of the conference committee, from all of the members of the conference committee who were appointed. And we can do better than that. So this is the final plea that I have to you, to just do what's right. Let's send this bill back to conference committee. Let's give the conferees the opportunity to do the job that the Speaker of the House appointed them to do. Let's at least listen to their input. Whether you take it or not is up to you. But just at least pretend to listen to their input. Let's follow the House and Senate joint rules, which very clearly state under 2.06 on page 8, all conference committees shall be open to the public, and actions taken shall be agreed upon in an open meeting. Those rules don't need any interpretation. And the clarity of the lack of transparency and the lack of ethical behavior on behalf of the members of the majority party in this body tonight do not need any interpretation. The public following at home can see exactly what you're doing. So consider this your wake-up call to actually just stop, take a step back, and do what's right. So members, please vote in favor of this motion to refuse to adopt the conference committee report. Let's send this back. Let's have an open and transparent process. And let's show some respect to the people that sent us here. Thank you.
Further discussion to the motion to refuse to adopt the report of Conference Committee of House File 2292. I recognize the member from Wright, Representative McDonald.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Members, I certainly won't go as long as Representative Doubt, although he brought up some very, very interesting and factual information, especially the crimes that were committed here, at least the lack of rules that were violated. But if you ever get a chance to walk around the Capitol and read some of the great literature and quotes by some of our founding fathers and great members of the House here, representatives, and also a former Vice President, Hubert H. Humphrey. I love reading his quotes, and I want to read a couple to you. First one is, to err is human, to blame someone else is politics. Now, Representative Pinto, you didn't really blame anyone for your mistake in the fact that this meeting was behind closed doors and was not following the rules, but to indicate that it was done in the past is kind of blaming. So good old Hubert H. Humphrey has some great quotes. I'm sure you'll agree. So I'll read that again. To err is human, to blame someone else is politics. Isn't that what we do as politicians? We blame someone else for a mistake that's made. And because of conference calls, mistakes done in the past shouldn't give reason to create those again. Another great quote I enjoy is, this one's really very, very relevant to the conversation today and to what had expired with this conference committee. Freedom is hammered out on the anvil of discussion, dissent, and debate. Isn't that a good one? Representative Pinto, I'm going to read that again. Did you hear that, members? This is should I read it again? Hubert H. Humphrey. Did you know that Hubert H. Humphrey lived in Waverly, Minnesota? His family came from Waverly, and that is in my district. It's just about 10, maybe 6 miles from Delano, where I reside, but the city of Waverly. And if you haven't been to Waverly, and it's Lake Waverly, they got a beautiful Catholic church there, St. Mary's on the lake. Yeah, check it out, and you'll come to the home of Hubert H. Humphrey, which is in my district. And that's why I like to quote him, because he has some good ones. But this is very relevant, Representative Pinto and members, about the lack of rules of what you just did with this conference committee. So freedom is hammered out on the anvil of discussion, dissent, and debate. And unfortunately, there was no freedom done with this conference committee because it was done in violation of the House and the Senate rules. It gave the public and the members, especially our member, our good member, my good friend, Representative Daniels, whom I've come to respect and admire, certainly no freedoms at all that he could discuss or dissent or debate this conference bill. The third one's really good, and this is relevant to our side, members. Never give in, never give up, never surrender no matter what. That kind of rhymes too. That's Hubert H. Humphrey. And because the public, and because we represent a majority of the folks here in Minnesota, we will not give up in fighting what is right for the public, what is right in government. I'm going to read that again for you. Never give in, never give up, never surrender no matter what. Hubert H. Humphrey. So, Mr. Speaker, we're not going to give up necessarily. Well, at one point we'll have to, I presume. We can't just speak until the 22nd of May, or maybe we can. But we will continue this fight, Representative Pinto and my friends on the other side, because what you have done is not right. You've broken the rules. You've had this conference committee behind closed doors in the middle of the night, and you certainly didn't even invite the minority member, Representative Daniels, along to be on the conference, to be in the meeting. Number 4 is very relevant to today, what's happening. Hubert H. Humphrey said, "The greatest healing therapy is friendship and love." So, Representative Pinto and the other side, if you really wanted to heal and show your friendship and love, like Hubert H. Humphrey stated, then you would vote in favor of the motion not to agree and concur with the conference call. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, so I'll repeat that again, because this one's really very important about love and respect. And especially for the minority, we should have at least some respect from the majority. And he says, the greatest healing therapy is friendship and love, by Hubert H. Humphrey. I love that one. And this one's really good, number 5. Oh, my friend, it's not what they take away from you that counts. It's what you do with it. It's what you do with what you have left. And all as we have left, members, is our voice. I'll read that again. Oh, my friend, we're talking to you folks over there on the other side, our friends. It's not what they take away from you that counts. You took away our voice. That's unfortunate. It's what you do with what you have left. And the only thing we have left is our voice, to fight for what is right for our constituents. And in this particular bill, you have taken our voice away. You've taken our constituents away, their voice away, and their opportunity to speak. Here's a really good one as well. The greatest gift of life is friendship, and I have received it. Hubert H. Humphrey. He certainly was a great orator, wasn't he? He has some great quotes and great talks. He fought for so many people. And I don't think he would approve of what you're doing on this particular conference bill. Say that again? Yes, he was. Here's a really good one as well. I want to read this one. This is, have you been out on the front lawn of this Capitol? They have a beautiful statue of Hubert H. Humphrey and some of his works and a little history of him. And this one's very important. The moral test of government is how that government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, and those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped. And that is so important. And that shows, that quote really sends home the message that the moral test of government, the moral test of what you did with this conference call, not doing it in public, not inviting our minority leader, really is a test of the moral behavior that you have for the minority. Mr. Speaker?
Representative McDonald, you have the floor.
I know, thank you. That's what I wanted. I had the floor. Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. But I just challenge the side, our friends over there, to have a little respect for the minority. Representative Olson said that basically because you have the trifecta, you can do anything you want. But that doesn't mean you should. The least we ask of you is to follow the rules. The least we ask of you is to be ethical in following the rules. The least we ask is you to be transparent, not opaque. The least we ask you is to be fair and just and give us, the minority who speaks for so many thousands of Minnesotans, the right to be heard, the right to speak on their behalf. The least you could do, majority, is to follow the rules of the House. So I encourage you, although I know you're not going to, but if you want to be moral and just, to vote to send this back to conference and not approve the conference committee.
Further discussion.
Mr. Speaker?
Representative Dameth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion to that we could meet past midnight.
Representative
And I would
Dameth
request a roll
moves
call.
that we meet past midnight. Is there any discussion to the motion?
I request a roll call.
Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I ask members to oppose the motion.
The clerk will take the roll on the motion to meet past midnight. The clerk will close the roll. There being 120 ayes and 5 nays, the motion prevails. Members, we are now back to discussion on the refusal to adopt the Conference Committee report for House File 2292. Discussion.
Mr. Speaker?
I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 10 a.m. Saturday, May 13th, 2023.
Representative Long moves when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 10 o'clock a.m. Saturday, May 13th, 2023. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion prevails. Representative Damath.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I didn't quite hear what the Majority Leader was saying. Could you just have, would the Majority Leader yield for a question?
He will yield, Representative Damath.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Majority Leader Long, when we adjourn, the fact that we voted to meet past midnight, are we going to be adjourning immediately?
I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The motion that just passed says that when we adjourn, we will be coming back at 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Representative Damath.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, we are on the refusal to adopt the Conference Committee report. I recognize the member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. So 9 years ago, when my brother first joined this lovely body, this wonderful body, in those entire 9 years, I have never gotten up to say anything about my brother. I rarely talk about him, he rarely talks about me, but today is the day. Because when he arrived 9 years ago into this body, what I heard repeatedly was, he is the nicest guy I've ever met. And maybe that was in contrast to me, I don't know, but because I'm not the nicest person you've ever met, and you know that. But I will tell you this, even if he is the nicest person you've ever met, he does not deserve to be steamrolled over, and that is exactly what you've done in this process. It is disrespectful, it is disrespectful to him, it is disrespectful to this body, and you have got to refuse to adopt this and send it back to actually respect someone who has been a part of this body for 9 years. Members, 9 years deserves respect. 1 year deserves respect. This body is disrespecting one of our own members repeatedly. You didn't even make it through the side-by-side comparisons in your conference committee. What are you doing? How do you, Representative Pinto, how do you possibly expect him to call you when you haven't even made it through the side-by-sides? What is he supposed to call you about? You haven't even finished the basic work. I don't even understand what we're doing. What are we doing? You know what? I'll tell you exactly what we're doing, members. We are making law illegally. I'm going to say that again because there's all kinds of chatter across this chamber right now because everybody wants to go home, but we're not going home. Because we are making law in this body illegally. We are missing committees. We are skipping committees. We are throwing fiscal notes out when they should be in every single fiscal committee. We are not following our own policies and procedures and rules. We are making law illegally. You are not only disrespecting a member of this body for the last 9 years, you are doing all kinds of things this session illegally. This has got to stop, and it's got to stop right now. And the only way you're going to stop it is to refuse to adopt this conference committee and send it back and do the process legally. And it's not just me saying this. I've had plenty of conversations with people that have been around this place for 30 or 40 years, and they have never seen a process that is this horrendous in their entire careers here. You might have the trifecta, and you've had the trifecta in the past. It's about once every 10 years, but this is the worst it has ever been. It is the worst it has ever been in the history of the state of Minnesota. And when are you going to wake up, and when are you going to follow the rules and the policies and the procedures that we have in place? Or are you just going to get challenged in court over and over and over and over and over again? What will it take? Representative Dowd just talked to you for over an hour. Representative Dowd just talked to you for over an hour, and you completely ignored what he had to say. He got a treat over there, apparently. Even when the conference committee on higher ed, which I had such high hopes for, because I was told we were going to do everything in the light of day, we were going to do trade offers back and forth, we were going to discuss policy, we were going to discuss numbers, and none of that happened. We did do side-by-sides, and we did do walkthroughs, and we did look at spreadsheets. At least we got further than Representative Daniels' conference committee. At least we did that. We did take public testimony. I don't even know. Did you even take public testimony? You did. Well, at least you took public testimony. And then you went into your smoke-filled rooms, and you made your deals. Dark of night. All secret. Nobody knew what was going on. And you just came out with this conference committee report at 11:45 p.m. 11:45 p.m. was sent to Representative Daniels to say, oh, you want to sign on this? Who is going to sit there and read through that whole thing when you haven't even been a part of the process? You had zero influence over what was in it. What are we doing? I'll tell you exactly what we're doing. We are making law illegally in this place. And enough is enough. Send this back to conference committee and do this conference report, committee report, legally. In the light of day, with motions. I don't even know. Did you do same and similar adoptions? Did you even do that? I don't even know. I don't think you did, because you didn't even make it through the side-by-side comparisons. I can't even believe this session. I've been here 11 years. I've never seen anything like it. And I just told you, there have been people here that have been here 30 and 40 years, and they've never seen such atrocious lawmaking in their entire careers. You might have the trifecta, but you do not have the hearts of the people if you're going to keep doing it like this. Please vote to refuse to adopt the conference committee report.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move to table the conference report on House File number 2292.
Representative Long moves to table the Conference Committee report on House File 2292. The motion is non-debatable. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails, and the Conference Committee report on House File 2292 is laid on the table. Representative Long.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Long moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails, and the House stands adjourned until 10 o'clock a.m. Saturday, May 13th, 2023.